Happy weekend. This is Weekend Wisdom with Sunny, and I'm Sunny if you're new to me. I am talking about a topic today that not everybody loves to talk about, one that might actually even create some defensiveness, and that's not my intention. I want to start by just saying that I wanted to open up this conversation around alcohol because it's a conversation that a lot of people in my community have been talking about, they've been thinking about, they've been asking me what my opinion is, what my thoughts are on it. And it's interesting because my thoughts have changed over the years, and I think they'll probably continue to change. So this is a conversation that is about alcohol and drinking alcohol. And it's a conversation about awareness, not necessarily to say, hey, do this or don't do this, but more of to talk about and dive into some of the curiosity that people are having. I have no judgment. I drank alcohol for many years. I've never had an addiction to it, but I have a lot of addiction around me. So both of my grandparents on one side of my family were alcoholics, and I have a variety of alcoholism in my extended family. So I don't have an opinion of good, bad, right, wrong, but I did think that it would be a great topic to discuss because I think it's one that, especially as we get a little bit older, we start looking at our relationship with alcohol, or maybe I hope that we do, especially if it's one that we're using and we start becoming dependent on it. So this is really something I wanted to talk about, just kind of from a place of understanding and conversation. So if you are joining me live, please say hello. Let me know you're with me because that's always super fun. And let's dive in. Let's talk about it. So a couple of questions that I am always curious about, and ones that I've asked myself too, are, is alcohol helping me? Does it affect me in a positive way or a negative way? Does it fit into my life in the place that I am in my life right now? And I want to talk about this in like a real life way, share a little bit of research that I discovered when I kind of started looking at this and asking myself some of these questions, so that maybe it will give you some information if you have been intuitively being curious about or thinking about, like, is this something that I want to continue doing? Is it hurting me? Is it bothering me? Is it affecting my health in a way that maybe I'm not aware of? Because that's actually what I discovered for myself. So I think that, in general, in society, alcohol is um, a pretty common, normal part of life for many people. We think about it like it's social and it's celebratory, and it helps people calm down and chill and relax. It's part of a culture a lot of times. And it's interesting because for me, that none of that is actually true. I mean, it has been now, but I grew up in Utah. And in Utah, as many of you know, the Mormon religion is dominant. I guess, well, they don't like being called Mormon now. So Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I guess they call them Latter-day Saints. And because of that, part of the words of wisdom in the religion is no caffeine, no soda, no alcohol. And so alcohol was something as I grew up, that was not something I ever saw. My parents didn't drink. My dad drank a beer once in a great while. But they didn't drink. My aunts and uncles didn't drink. Like, there was no alcohol around me. And not only was there no alcohol around me, but it was very much frowned upon. It was something that there's a lot of judgment and a lot of criticism. And even when we got into our teenage years where we wanted to start drinking, you had to hide it. You couldn't talk about it. You would never, ever even suggest that you would want to drink even when you were 21. Like, it was an interesting dynamic. So although in most of society's culture, it's a normal part of life, in mine, it wasn't. And so, when I started thinking about the reasons that for specifically for me, why I drank, and maybe if this is something you've been talking about, thinking about, wondering about within yourself, we know people drink for lots of reasons, right? And if you are somebody who has a drink once in a while, or you have drinks more than once in a while, think about, and maybe share in the comments if you feel guided to, like, why do you drink? You have a drink after a long day. Sometimes you drink socially because you're out celebrating something. Maybe you drink out of habit because it's what you've always done. I think sometimes it's just because it's what we do. Like, we just do that at the end of the day. We have a couple drinks, or we go and relax, or we go out with some friends and we have a drink, and all of those things are typical, and they're normal. But what I started recognizing is, especially as I got older, is that if I had a drink, that night I slept like shit, and I didn't feel good in the morning. Not that I had a hangover, but I just didn't feel good. I felt more lethargic. Sometimes I'd have a headache. I would just be kind of more blah. And so for me, I got curious, like, what is some of the physical effects of alcohol? Because I do think it helps to understand how it's actually affecting your body when you're drinking. And I also think that it's helpful to understand, as we get older, how it affects us, especially us women, because it affects our hormones in so many ways that I think a lot of times it's contributing to some of the struggles that we have in what a lot of times is diagnosed as menopause, but also I know for me, it didn't help me. So we know that alcohol is a depressant, right? And what that really is meaning is that it's slowing down our brain activity. So it relaxes our nervous system, which is, I think, why a lot of people want to drink, right? It lowers our inhibitions. It probably calms us down more, makes us less anxious, at least immediately. And I think that's why people feel so relaxed when they have a drink, right? Because it calms the system. It's like, oh, I just got to chill and kind of check out, not think and worry so much about whatever's happening in the world or in my life or what have you. And so we feel relaxed. But the body also treats alcohol as a toxin. Your liver is going to prioritize processing your alcohol first. So what that means is it's going to process the alcohol, and everything else is going to be pushed to the side. So then our digestion is slower, the fat burning is slower, our sleep cycles are different, our hormones are shifted. And again, it's just, I share that just to help us to understand what's actually happening. And one of the biggest things that I noticed in myself, as I said, that happened is that I didn't realize how much alcohol was affecting my sleep. And I was not a great sleeper to begin with. So, I think that it helped me fall asleep faster, but my REM sleep was much, much lower. And the REM is what we need it's where our emotional processing happens. It's where our brain gets restoration. It's where our nervous system recalibrates. So we fall asleep faster, but the quality of our sleep is not great. I noticed for me, I would wake up all the time. I wouldn't feel rested. I'd feel super foggy the next day. And then as the as the alcohol gets cleared out of your system, then your nervous system is going to kind of rebound. And when it rebounds, then there can be this whoosh of energy. And this energy is like anxiety, restlessness, um, being extra sensitive or irritable. And I think that's why a lot of times people, because I have a lot of clients, will say, I feel so anxious. And they didn't feel it the day before, but they felt it the next day because they felt so relaxed the night before. And with everything that's happening in the body, this is one of the effects that it can have. Now, the other thing that alcohol does is it affects the part of our brain that helps us to make decisions and helps us to regulate our emotions. And I think that's why a lot of times when we're drinking, we'll say things that we wouldn't normally say, or we'll do things that we wouldn't normally do. Our emotions are bigger. Our reactions are more immediate. We don't really have as much ability to respond as we do to react. And it's just good awareness for us. It's not right, wrong, good, bad, but it is awareness. So I thought I would share one of the things that has really shifted in my life and give you guys a little bit of background. And certainly, again, I am not an expert in any of this. This is Weekend Wisdom with Sunny, and it's just me sharing topics that I think could be of benefit and things that I'm thinking about, things that I'm talking about, things that I'm doing to see if they benefit you too. So if you're watching and you're live, throw a comment in there for me. Let me know how it is affecting you. Maybe you've been thinking some of these things. Maybe you are someone that has had a lot of alcoholism or addiction around you. And so you have this kind of push pull with it. I know I had a push pull with it myself. And so give you a little bit of background, because I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, alcohol really was limited. And it was like, from our perspective, I know this sounds funny, but from our perspective, like coffee, alcohol, soda, it was like evil. And so it wasn't ever something that I really got into a lot. Not that I wouldn't, as a teenager, go and have a couple of wine coolers and sneak around and do that, but it wasn't something that I did a lot of. And then, I was a mom at 18, and so I didn't have the space, the time, the support to be drinking. And my son's birth father was an alcoholic, like a serious alcoholic at 19. And so somebody had to be sober. And so I chose that to be me. So I didn't drink for a few years when my son was very little. And then when I met my husband, oddly enough, I wasn't really a drinker, but I met him in a bar. And, we would go out and have a couple drinks when we went out to dinner or something like that. But we really weren't drinkers either. But I'd have a couple of drinks. We went to a party or we went to dinner or something like that. And then one day I was probably, I don't know, 25, maybe 28, somewhere around there. One day I just was like, yeah, I don't really want alcohol. And I didn't drink alcohol for almost 10 years, just nothing. And it wasn't I have a problem with it. It wasn't I think nobody else should do it. We had, my husband would drink a beer once in a while. So we had beer in the house or we'd have beer when we'd go out. He'd have a beer once in a while. We had beer in the house, but we didn't really keep alcohol around when our kids were young. And then probably I was probably about 38 or so. I was at an event, and it wasn't ever something that I said, I'm never going to drink again in my life. I never felt that extreme energy with alcohol at all for me. But I've had a lot of people in my life that have, and a lot of clients that I've worked with that have, that I can either have it and I'm going to drink, or I am not. Right. But I was like, well, I don't know, one day. And so one day, probably when I was about 38 or so, somebody said, do you want a glass of wine? I'd actually, honestly, never had wine before. I was 38 years old. I'd never had wine. And so, we were in Spain, and we were in a fancy restaurant, and apparently it was expensive wine. I don't know, but I had a glass of wine, and then I had another glass of wine, and I'm like, oh, I think I like wine. And so I I started drinking wine. And again, not often, maybe once or twice a month. I would have a glass or two glasses, maybe if I was hanging out with my friends or my team or something like that. Most of the time, not at home, and just more socially. I mean, I'd never have it at home, just like my husband and I. That just never ever happened. But it did happen out in like social environments, and it was great. It was fine. It tasted good. I enjoyed it. Whatever. I never really thought about it, and I didn't really ever think about it until I started getting into my probably mid 40s. My mid 40s, I started noticing um, how much harder it was to get good sleep, and how much more difficult it was for me the next day. And I started thinking, gosh, what the heck? Why is this happening? And at the time, it didn't occur to me that it could be hormones, or it could be aging, or it could be any of those things. But I was sleeping shitty, and I was already a shitty sleeper. So that for sure didn't help. And then I would wake up in the morning again, I'd be more irritable. I didn't feel clear. I felt more tired. And so I was like, why am I choosing this? And what I realized is I was just doing it just because that's what I did. When we went out, we'd have a drink or two. If we went dancing, we'd have a drink or two. We celebrated something, we'd have a drink or two. Now, I was always really a lightweight. So, like, I always would try to have a third drink, but I could never finish a third drink. That was kind of the joke, right? Like, that was the max that I could do. Um, and and so I started just asking myself those questions for actually a couple of years. Just like, I don't really feel like a drink. But then if I was, on the lake and we're just relaxing or something, I'd be like, well, yeah, I'll have a drink. And I started noticing that I would put just a little less alcohol in, I liked like cranberry and vodka. And so I would have a little bit, I'd have less and less vodka. I never had a lot anyway, but enough that it affected me. And so I started realizing that this was a habit. And again, it wasn't a daily habit, it wasn't a weekly habit, but it was enough of a habit that I was like, okay, how does this benefit me? And I don't know, are you someone, those of you that are live, or if you're watching this on replay, go ahead and comment, like, what kind of habit do you have around it? And maybe you've noticed this for yourself. So I started noticing it was a habit, and I'm like, that just started to shift things for me a little bit. And I started going, I don't know, why am I doing this? Why am I drinking? What's the purpose in it? What's the value in it? And I wasn't, it wasn't because I was trying to like follow the rules, although I really had that ingrained in me. And so when I was young, that was for sure it. But I just started noticing. And, I think that part of the balance is that I would think, well, that's kind of just what we do. And that's kind of what people do when they go out, is they have a drink, or when they celebrate New Year's, have a drink, or they celebrate the birthday. And I start thinking, yeah, but you know what? You don't have to celebrate that way. There's lots of ways to celebrate that you could be more present with. And that's what it ended up being for me. It was a couple things. And one of them was, I like being present in my life. I don't like being affected by external things. I don't take medications if I can avoid it. Um, I like my mind to be clear, and I probably like a little more control than I would like to admit. And I don't feel in control if I'm taking medications or drinking. I was never somebody that ever even tried drugs, because that just wasn't me. I like to be in awareness and control of my life, and I wanted to be present. And and I started thinking, well, why do we drink? Why do I drink? And for sure there was that social connection. I think it did absolutely help me to relax my mind. I've got a busy mind, and it's constantly going and thinking and creating, and so it would help me kind of relax my mind. I noticed that we would drink in celebration, and I liked the taste of, vodka didn't really have a taste, but I like to have the cranberry juice, or I would mix it with my Bywater or something like that. And so, that worked. That was all good. It was okay. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing bad about it. But the question I started diving in a little deeper to, and this was about 4 years ago. Well, probably about 6 years ago is when I started really asking myself, like, how is it really affecting me? Is it benefiting my life? And I kind of was like, nah, it's not really benefiting my life, but it wasn't causing enough of a problem to stop either. So I didn't. And then in 2022, I got frozen shoulder. And for those of you that don't know, frozen shoulders, literally when your shoulder freezes up, and mine froze up to a point that my arm was like this, and I couldn't, my arm, I couldn't move it anyway. Like I couldn't move it out. I couldn't lift my arm, shoulder in any way. I couldn't do my hair, couldn't put my makeup on. And it was super painful, like so painful. And I wouldn't even take medication for the pain. And the pain was so heavy that I just would cry every morning for hours and try to get myself together. And one of the only things that helped was to lay in the tub and my arm was still stuck like this, but that was the only thing that I could find some freedom from. And so I remember thinking, maybe if I have a drink, it'll feel better. And then I did not like that thought. That thought scared me. I'd already been thinking, yeah, you know what? Alcohol isn't really good for me. And then I thought, oh, I need to get out of this pain. And I was desperate to get out of the pain. But I didn't want to take medication. I didn't want to take Tylenol. I didn't want to take, I could have gotten Oxy or whatever the things are that people take, but I didn't want to take something. And so then when I had that thought, well, gosh, if I have a drink, maybe that would dull the pain. And it probably would have. But I didn't like the fact that I had the thought. And so the question I asked myself is, how and what is this doing to my body? Right? How am I feeling? Do I feel better or worse? And what I found is I felt better initially when I first would have a drink, but then I thought, look at what it's doing to my body. My body, I don't sleep. I don't feel good. I feel foggy. I feel heavy. I feel guilty, bad if I did drink too much, or maybe I got a little, I have a tendency to get a little louder, and that didn't feel good. And so I really started looking at my body, and I started saying, okay, if I don't filter the things that come into my body, my liver has to filter it. And I knew that my liver was already struggling in general because I'd been working with a naturopath, and I'd had a bunch of hormone stuff. My hormones were in, I was really struggling with menopause and perimenopause and menopause. And I was doing all of this work. I was taking these supplements, and I was eating healthy. I was doing IVs. I was doing all kind of castor oil packs for my liver. And I thought, okay, I'm doing all these things to get my body healthier. Why would I now put something in it that actually causes the filter, my liver, to not function right, to have to work overtime? Because if we don't filter the things that we put in, and that's our air and our water and our food and all the chemicals and shit that we put in, then our body's going to have to filter it. And that was it. I was like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And so for me, it was a conscious choice to stop drinking, not because I thought it was wrong or bad or I had an addiction or anything else, but because I didn't want my body to have to work any harder than it already was. Now, in my 30s, I don't think I would have thought of that because it didn't seem that my body was having to work hard. In my 40s, it started building up. I'm 55 now. And so it's been almost 4 years since I quit drinking. And my body has for sure gotten healthier and stronger. My liver does so much better. And I can't say that having a couple of drinks a couple of times a month was causing it more and more and more problems. I don't know about that. But what I do know is that me knowing that I'm doing what is best and healthiest for my body and that feels good. What I do know is I sleep much better. And I have learned to prioritize sleep. Then I don't have the lack of clarity and feel out of control and all those other things that came with it. And when I started to recognize that I feel better, then it was so much easier, to a point that literally I don't have any interest in it at all. Now that doesn't mean that I'm saying, oh, I'm never going to drink again, because I might, and I'm not attached to it. But I do think I've had so many of my clients have been talking about it lately. They've been talking about how they feel around alcohol, how they feel watching other people drink alcohol. I know for me, I've gotten activated watching my children drink alcohol and drink too much alcohol at times. And I certainly know that they didn't learn that from me, because I've never been somebody that drank much. However, I know that it certainly, seeing it from the lens of the parent, witnessing the kids, created a different awareness in me as well. And I think that that's really what I thought I'd share, is awareness, like having awareness. And that doesn't mean you have to stop drinking. It just means that, if you have awareness, you might drink less, you might stop, you might do the same thing that you've always done, but you might be more intentional with it. You might create space between it, and you might pay attention to how it's really affecting your body. Because what I recognize is that, when, for many people, and I don't know, are you one of them? I'm not, but I know a lot of people that are. If you say, well, you can't have it, then you're going to want it. Right. And so I don't necessarily think that's healthy either, but I'm curious. And if you're live, then let's share with me how do you feel about alcohol? How have you been affected by it? Like, I do think that, my mother, was somebody, number one, she was brought up in religion, but she was also raised by two alcoholics. So my mom never drank. She didn't drink until she actually moved in with me, and she'd have a glass of wine here and there. But like this much wine, like I've never saw her drunk in my entire life. And I never saw my dad drunk in my entire life. And I think I was blessed in that way, because that aspect of addiction never affected me in my own home, but certainly in who I chose as a partner when I got pregnant with my son, and the effects of that, and the fear of my son having that same addiction, absolutely, I think, affected the choices that I've made. Right. But at this stage, so at 51 is when I quit drinking alcohol. And then I recognize that, yeah, I can stop that, and I can be doing all these healthy things and going to the gym and taking supplements and all those things, but I'm going to need to do something else to kind of support my health, because my health was really going downhill. I discovered that I was malnutritioned. I wasn't eating enough nutrients, and I'd been a vegetarian for 33 years. And so 2 years ago, I started eating meat again as well. And that was a whole nother journey. But I'm still doing it, because I feel so much better. And I have been so much healthier since then. And it's been a huge, huge change. And so letting go of alcohol, not replacing it, but recognizing how it affected me, and then starting to eat meat, I have really kind of done a 360 in my life from a health perspective. And so one of the things that I just would encourage you, and I'm going to read your guys' chats in just a minute, is asking yourself, are you, when you go to have a drink, you go to pour a drink, you go to out to eat or whatever, is just asking yourself, especially if you've been thinking about it. If you haven't been, or if you don't have any issue with it, then this won't be an issue. But if as I'm talking, I'm pushing any buttons, if there's anything you're like, or getting a little bit protective or defensive, then there may be something to it for you. And again, I have no judgment in it. My husband will have a drink once in a while still, much less than he ever did before, but he'll still have a beer once in a while. I don't know if he'll even have a mixed drink anymore, but so I don't have any judgment in it. But I do think that as we get a little bit older, we pay more attention to our feelings and our thoughts and our emotions. For me, I really think my intuition was the biggest thing that guided me into it, to just say, you know what, that doesn't feel good, and it's affecting your body, right? So you may ask yourself, am I choosing it because I want it, or do I just default to it because it's a habit? Is it just because of the people I'm hanging around, and that's just what we do and what we've always done? And you all know that if that's the case, I'm always the one to say, hey, you can always make a new choice, right? And if you want that, and I understand that it can kind of be a little bit harder if you have like a circle of friends or family members, and this is just kind of the thing you always do, to be the one that stops doing it. But I guess that's also where I would give you some encouragement and just remind you that, if something feels right or wrong or good or not good to you, honor you. Because I think it is really about knowing yourself. It's not about right and wrong. It's about what's working for you for now. And it can always change. And that little awareness around something like this starts to create meaningful changes in your life. And I think self-awareness is such an important, it's so important for us to have self-awareness and understanding the things that support you and the things that don't. And then choosing from that place. So as I wrap up, I'm going to share some of the comments that you guys have made, and I would love to hear. So are you somebody that you do enjoy alcohol? Are you somebody that as you're getting older, you're like, kind of like I was, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel as good? Are you someone's like, no, I would not give up my drinks for anything? And again, it's all welcome. There's no problem. I'm really just curious, because I've thought about doing a full podcast on this topic. And I've also thought about doing a workshop, because there are so many different conversations that I've noticed that have been happening. And I just read an article the other day. This is actually what got me thinking about it. Is I read an article the other day that said that, I don't know which generation is the young generation, like the kids that are like in their teens and 20s and maybe late 20s. Is that Generation X or Generation Z? I don't know which one it is, but whatever it is, they're saying that that the alcohol industry is actually losing money because the younger generation doesn't have as much of an interest in it. I imagine that part of that is because there is more information, widespread information, and there's more focus on health and well-being out, even on social media. There's more of that. So my guess is that that's part of it, but I thought that was very interesting as well. It's certainly not true for my son, my youngest son, but I did think that was interesting. And some of the young men that I work with, that is true. They've chosen not to drink alcohol for whatever reason they have made that decision. So let's see what you guys are all saying. So love that you're talking about this topic right now. There's been a lot of alcohol addiction with many people around me. Yeah, that was my experience too. I actually have a cousin that came to live with me for some time when he was struggling with a heroin addiction. And when he had stopped heroin, which was great, but he went to alcohol. And we would find, empty bottles and things like that. And that was kind of it was a stepping stone for him from, this horrible addiction. I guess alcohol is, sometimes there's various levels. But it was I recognized that it was a trigger for me, because if you've had relationships and you've been affected by alcohol in negative ways, I think that I certainly had a reaction to it, out of fear, of course, out of fear. I don't drink maybe a few times a year because I'm super sensitive to it. Yeah, that's me too. And that's part of what I started thinking is like, okay, well, I don't feel good and I don't sleep good and my stomach aches and I feel cloudy. I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, what's the point? I could just have some tea or have it. And what I recognized, one of them was, I like to have it in a pretty glass. Like, I like to have a drink in a pretty glass. And so I'm like, well, I could just have a wine glass and I could have it, not because I want to feel like I'm drinking wine, but I just like the prettiness of the glass. And so, because it looks pretty, the drinks look pretty, that kind of thing. So I started ordering that way, and that made a difference too. So I do it sporadically. I don't drink at home. I occasionally have a drink with others, yet not always. 90% of the time it's a no, even when out. Yeah. And I think that anything in harmony, anything within reason, like if you have some harmony in things, it's almost like eating too. You're not ever going to not have any sugar, but if you can stay at like 80, 90% really healthy, then 10% you might be, then it's not going to affect your body in these terrible ways, unless you're super sensitive. If you're super sensitive, it absolutely will affect it. Let's see. My relationship with alcohol has changed over my life. At this point in my life, it's quite minimal, but still a part of some social experiences. Yeah, I think that was me too. Mostly social. And then it just became something that I'm like, I don't want to trade my clarity and my connection and my liver and my health, my hormones, especially my hormones. Alcohol really affects your hormones. When your hormones are already out of whack, then it was not worth it to me. I do enjoy it more for a social event, but I have to really feel up for it health-wise, as I am so sensitive. Yep, I hear you, girl. I feel it has a time and a place, helps connect, like concerts, etc., and be present within the music. Yeah, and see, and that's interesting, because for me, that's part of what I would notice, is that I was not as present. I would not be as connected. So of course, it affects our bodies in different ways, right? It affects our bodies in different ways. Vicki, good to see you, girl. And Christy and Mandy and Kelly, great to see all you guys. Jennifer and Michelle and Haley, great to see you guys. Social experience, and I'm antisocial these days. Vicki, why are you antisocial, girl? Come on out. You don't have to drink, but come on out, my friend. So anyway, friends, this is just a conversation. I wanted to bring the conversation up. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you're watching on the replay, I'd love to hear your perspective on it. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, give me a like or give me some hearts. And if I have enough people that are interested in this subject, then I'll do a full podcast on it with some, detailed information that may be of value to all of you. But for today, with Wisdom Weekend Weekend Wisdom with Sunny, I'm still trying to get used to what I'm doing, guys. I thought this would be a fun, different, maybe even difficult conversation. Maybe for some of you, you are struggling and you do know that you have an issue with alcohol. And if that is the case, and you want to do something different, then I encourage you to get support. The one great thing that is different than it was years ago is that there's so many different options. And, there's the fake alcohol, like what is it called? Near beer or whatever, things like that, that can really help bridge that gap. But when you stop drinking and you have an addiction, or you're borderline on that place, then I think it's going to take more than just stopping drinking. You have to discover what the emotional root pain is coming from, what we're trying to push down or what we're trying to bury, different than having a social drink here and there when it's something that is very consistent. And so if you get to that place and you're looking for that support, there is a lot of support out there. I've certainly had clients and friends that have walked that journey and do great. And there's a whole bunch of stuff underneath there. So I encourage you to honor and love yourself and do what's best for you and your body. Oh, me and my frozen shoulders. I can't even lift a glass. Oh, Vicki, God, I know. I'm sending you so much love, sister. Keep them moving. That's the thing I will tell you. I need to do a podcast on frozen shoulder because a lot of people don't know about it. It is a hormonal reaction generally, and there's so much non-information around it. So stay tuned. All right, friends. Thank you so much. I love you. I appreciate you. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe and like and share and all the things. If you're on Facebook, same thing. Letting people know how to connect with me and to share these little tidbits is greatly appreciated. I love you all. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your weekend. Have a wonderful Sunday, fun day tomorrow. I hope you do something fun. And I will see you on Tuesday right here live at noon Pacific time for our Soul Talk podcast. And if you can't join live, then you can find it on, all of the places podcasts are played, but specifically YouTube will help the replay. All right. Thanks, guys. Love you all. Have a great rest of your night.